From the moment I met Clara Benton, I thought she was everything I wanted to become. Confident, eloquent, respected, she carried herself like she owned the room, and in many ways, she did. When I joined Renshaw and Locke Marketing as a junior strategist, she was already a legend there. The kind of woman whose name made people sit up straighter, whose ideas shaped entire campaigns that went on to win awards. So, when she offered to mentor me, it felt like fate had finally smiled in my direction. "You've got potential," she said, with a smile that made my heart flutter between pride and nervousness. "Stick with me, and I'll make sure the higher-ups notice you." I didn't know then that her words were less a promise and more a warning disguised as generosity. At first, things went exactly how I'd imagined. She invited me to her office often, let me sit in on meetings with clients, and encouraged me to brainstorm. We'd spend late evenings huddled over presentation slides, bouncing ideas off each other. She'd say things like, "You've got a real instinct for this, Marlene. Keep that fire." I remember feeling grateful, seen. I even started calling her my work mom when chatting with coworkers. But slowly, small cracks began to show. The first time I noticed something was off was during a product launch campaign for a luxury skincare brand. I had come up with a slogan, "Bare Truth, Bold Skin," and Clara had loved it. We built an entire presentation around that concept. The next morning, she went into a client pitch alone, saying she'd handle it because they prefer one voice. When she returned, she was glowing. The pitch had gone perfectly. The client had loved her campaign. I waited for her to mention me, to give credit where it was due, but she didn't. Not a word. Later, when I asked how it went, she smiled and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart, there'll be plenty of chances for you." I brushed it off. One oversight wasn't worth getting bitter over. But it happened again and again. Ideas that I'd sketched, frameworks I'd developed, she'd present them as her own. At first, she'd include me in meetings, sitting quietly while she took the spotlight. Then, she started forgetting to invite me altogether. I'd find out about decisions secondhand, reading my own words in board reports with her name signed at the bottom. Each time I tried to confront her, she'd laugh it off. "Oh, come on, Marlene, we're a team. What's mine is yours, right? It's all for the company." I started losing sleep. I'd wake up with my jaw clenched, my stomach knotted with frustration. Every time I walked into the office, I felt smaller, invisible. My coworkers began treating me like her assistant rather than her protege. "Can you get Clara's coffee? She said you'd print her deck." It became humiliating. One evening, after everyone had left, I sat at my desk staring at my screen, tears blurring my vision. I'd given everything to this job. I'd believed in her, and she'd used me. That was the moment something in me shifted. The naive eagerness turned to steel. I realized if I didn't stand up for myself, she'd keep walking over me until I was nothing but a stepping stone in her career. But I couldn't just confront her outright. She was too powerful, too clever. I needed proof. So I started documenting everything. Whenever we brainstormed, I'd set my phone on the table, recording notes as I claimed. In reality, I was collecting hours of conversations where I pitched ideas she later claimed as her own. I kept emails, drafts, even voice memos. Over weeks, I built a digital trail so solid it could crumble her entire facade. Then came the moment that sealed it. The board was preparing to review promotions, and I knew Clara was gunning for a VP position. She was using my latest project, a multi-million-dollar rebranding campaign for a fitness tech company, as her centerpiece. It was my concept, from start to finish. She even joked during one meeting, "I should put your name on this one, huh?" I smiled tightly, knowing full well she never would. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. A few days before the board presentation, I stayed late again. She'd left her laptop open in her office while attending a networking dinner. I hesitated at first, my heart pounded, but then I remembered every humiliation, every idea she'd stolen. I plugged in a flash drive and copied our project folder, which contained time-stamped files clearly showing I was the original author of all core materials. I wasn't hacking or breaking in, I was taking what was mine. The next morning, I made my move. I composed a detailed email to the board of directors. I kept my tone calm, professional, factual. Attached were the recordings, time-stamped drafts, and email threads showing her repeatedly presenting my work as her own. My hands shook when I clicked send. For a few minutes, I just sat there, staring at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. I didn't know what would happen, whether they'd believe me or blacklist me for going against her. The fallout came swiftly. Within 2 hours, HR called both of us in. Clara walked into the conference room, heels clicking, exuding her usual confidence. When she saw the board members sitting there with tight expressions, I saw the first flicker of unease in her eyes. They asked her to sit. Then they played the recordings. Her smile faltered after the first clip. By the third, she was pale. When they displayed the timestamps of my project files, she tried to speak, but one of the directors cut her off. Miss Benton, would you like to explain why you've been representing your subordinate's work as your own? Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked at me then, eyes full of disbelief, as if she couldn't fathom that the timid girl she'd once manipulated had outsmarted her. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I simply sat there, calm, collected. After the meeting, the decision was made quietly but decisively. Clara was demoted and placed on probation pending a full ethics review. Within a month, she resigned. The board, perhaps out of guilt or recognition, promoted me to her position. When I moved into her old office, I remember standing by the window, the city stretched out below, the morning light spilling across the desk. I should have felt triumphant, and I did, but it wasn't pure joy. It was something heavier, because beneath the victory was the realization that I'd become someone different, stronger, yes, sharper, but also less trusting. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't just break your heart, it reshapes you. A few weeks later, I ran into Clara at a cafe near the office. She looked tired, worn down, like the wind had gone out of her sails. She gave me a tight smile. "Congratulations, Marlene," she said. "You played the game well." I looked her in the eye and said, "No, Clara, I didn't play the game. I just stopped letting you cheat." She said nothing after that, just nodded slowly and walked away. I watched her leave, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. She had been my mentor once, someone I admired, but she'd turned her guidance into a weapon, and I'd done what I had to do to survive. Over time, my name began to mean something in the company. I earned respect the right way, through work that was mine and mine alone. People started coming to me for advice, for mentorship, and every time a young employee would ask for help, I'd remember Clara. I'd remember how it felt to have your light dimmed by someone you trusted. So I'd promise myself quietly, I'll never be like her. But sometimes, late at night, when the office was empty and the city hummed softly outside, I'd replay that day in the boardroom, the look on her face, the silence that followed, and I'd wonder if I'd gone too far, if I'd crossed a line between justice and vengeance. Then I'd remind myself of the countless times she'd crossed mine without hesitation. In the end, maybe revenge isn't about getting even. It's about reclaiming your power. And that's what I did. I didn't destroy her. I simply exposed her truth. Still, part of me will always remember the first day she smiled at me, the warmth in her voice when she said she'd guide me. Because every betrayal starts with trust, and every victory begins with loss. Now, when I walk into meetings and see my team waiting for me, I carry those lessons with me like armor. I listen, I credit, I lift others the way I once hoped someone would lift me. And in that balance between ambition and integrity, trust and self-protection, I've finally found peace. Because the sharpest knives aren't the ones that cut your back. They're the ones that taught you how to stand taller when you pull them out yourself. You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.